Hello my friends, Askøy. I'm out in a beautiful Norwegian day. It's really nice today. Blue sky, just some clouds, a little bit foggy you can say. I'm out shooting with my Action 2 and I was planning to do a 5-month review of the camera and if I still like this camera and I'm still going to keep it and use it. The Action 2 was launched in October 2021 and I remember all the hype around the Action 2 and people was debating how the camera is going to look like and the design and if DJI going to take a risk this time and produce a totally new camera. But a lot of people was hoping that DJI would stick to the normal action camera design and do the same as GoPro has done and still are doing with their camera. But DJI, they wanted to go on a different road. They wanted to design a completely different camera with a modular design and a magnetic mounting system. And a lot of people was extremely skeptical about that camera because of the design and they was afraid that this isn't going to be any good at all. The GoPro Hero 10 was launched just a couple of months before the Action 2 and I was extremely impressed with the GoPro Hero 10 when it was launched. But in the beginning it had some problems and some issues, but they fixed it with some firmware updates. But GoPro is still a GoPro. You still have a lot of the same issues with bugs and freeze and all kinds of things, but it's getting better. It's much better now than it was before. But with the old Osmo Action that was before the Action 2, that was a design that was quite like the GoPro Hero 10 or Hero 9 or Hero 8, and it was extremely good camera. But it has some limitation. The field of view wasn't any good. You can only shoot up to 4K, 60 frames. But it was overall a pretty good camera. So everyone was waiting for the Action 2 and how it's going to be and all of that. And I remember when the camera was launched, there was a lot of hype and a lot of discussion and debates about the camera and this design of it. But when the camera came out, when it was launched, it's got a lot of critical questions and people wasn't happy about it at all. But I had the camera now for 5 months and I must say I'm extremely impressed with it. In the beginning it was some issues, not any bugs, but it was some flickering in the image and all of that. But overall the design, I really like it. I like the modular design. And it's so small and compact, and you can shoot up to 4K 120 as you can do on the GoPro Hero 10. But of course you can't shoot higher than 4K, but that's all right. I think the image quality in the 4K image looks really sharp and nice. And after the latest updates now, we now got horizon balancing, which I'm using now and I just love it. The horizon is locked up to 45 degrees and they did some other updates to it also, because when you're shooting in Rocksteady 2.0 the field of view in some settings was too wide and too distorted. So we're now going to switch to the steady mode. In standard, first we're going to switch to standard and see how that looks, and we're going to go to wide and ultra wide so you can see how it looks. And I'm in the middle of the woods, so please pay attention to the trees and everything and see if you can see a lot of distortion in the image. Okay guys, we're now in standard dwarp in steady mode, and in this mode it crops in a little bit than it do with the Rocksteady 2.0. You have to remember that steady mode is a new algorithm to the Rocksteady and means that you crops in on the image just a little bit just to get rid of some of the distortion. But you have a much wider field of view than you have in horizon balancing, because of the algorithm has to punch in a little bit so they can lock the horizon. But this is standard dwarp. I'm going to switch to wide, or maybe I should switch to Rocksteady 2.0 standard so you can see if there are any major difference. I'm using the Ulanzi MT16 tripod, which I love. It's so solid and fits perfect to this camera. So let's switch to Rocksteady 2.0, standard dwarp. Just pay attention and see if there are any major difference in the field of view and of course distortions. Let's switch to Rocksteady 2.0, standard dwarp. Okay guys, this is Rocksteady 2.0 in standard dwarp. It should be a little bit wider than the steady mode, because in steady mode it crops in, like I said, and this takes advantage of everything. So the field of view is around 134 degrees, I think, and in ultra wide you have 155, which are extremely wide. So let's switch back again to steady mode and wide, and then we're going to test it in Rocksteady, of course. But let's switch to steady. Okay guys, this is wide in steady mode, which is stabilization mode, so you know that. Wide field of view, does it look good? I think using steady mode is the best mode, especially if you're gonna vlog in the city, so you don't get so much distortion in the image. But this is steady mode, wide. Let's switch to Rocksteady 2.0, wide. Okay guys, this is wide in Rocksteady 2.0. Can you see a major difference? Can you see any more distortion in this mode than in steady mode? Does it look good? Is the image quality good? Some people are telling me that when you're using wide field of view, you get more details in the image. I don't know. If it crops in, you don't get so much details. That's a possibility, of course, but I don't know. Let's switch to ultra wide in steady mode and see how that looks like. Okay guys, this is ultra wide in steady mode, which, like I said, is a new mode that crops in a little bit on the image so they get rid of some of the distortion. But is this usable, or does everything look too distorted? We're going to switch to Rocksteady 2.0 in ultra wide and see the difference. It should be a pretty big difference, because in the ultra wide mode you get a lot of distortion and you're using the whole field of view, which is 155 degrees. I'm not quite sure in steady mode, but I think it's around 140 or something like that. But let's switch to Rocksteady 2.0 in ultra wide and see how that looks. Okay guys, this is ultra wide in Rocksteady 2.0. Does it look strange? Can you see a lot of distortion with the trees and everything? I'm pretty sure you can see quite a big difference between this mode and steady mode. I think the right thing to use with this camera is actually horizon balancing, which has the horizon locked up to 45 degrees, or steady mode. When you're out vlogging in nature, I think the best thing to do is to use the horizon balancing, so you don't get that tilted horizon. It can be pretty annoying to see when you can't keep your arms steady all the time, and having the locked horizon is extremely important. So let's switch back to horizon balancing so you can just see the big difference. In horizon balancing you can't switch the field of view, that's locked. So let's switch to horizon balancing. Okay guys, we switch now back to horizon balancing, which are my favorite setting to use, because you have the locked horizon up to 45 degrees. That means you can move your arm pretty much when you're out vlogging, especially talking to the camera, and it's always nice to look at a steady horizon. But for me, using either horizon balancing, or if I want a wider field of view, I'm using the steady mode because you don't get too much distortion. But of course, in some different settings, it can be better to use the Rocksteady 2.0. But I can't see any difference in the stabilization. The stabilization on the Dji Action 2 is excellent, and it is as good as the GoPro Hero 10. Maybe even better in some different settings. And the low light on the Dji Action 2 is better than the GoPro Hero 10. You can crank up the ISO much more on this camera than you can do on the GoPro Hero 10 because before the image gets extremely noisy. So what do you think, guys? Dji Action 2 or the GoPro Hero 10? I'm really not sure. I think it all depends on what you're going to use the camera for. If you're a vlogger or just want a small easy camera to use, maybe this is the best one to get. If you want higher resolutions like 5.3K, maybe the GoPro Hero 10 is a better camera, but overall this camera is so easy to use and it always works, no troubles at all. You can trust it, and of course if you have the screen and power module, you have much more battery life on this camera than you have on the GoPro Hero 10. But of course the GoPro Hero 10, everything is waterproof, not on the Dji Action 2. So this is my review and talk about the Dji Action 2, and it's a keeper for me. I really love it, and I can't wait to see what DJI will launch next with action cameras. I'm pretty sure they're gonna stick to a modular design, and I'm pretty sure that GoPro is gonna come up with some great cameras, but it's always fun to see that companies are competing against each other, so we can have a battle there. That's really great. So thank you so much for watching, and it's a beautiful day. It is. I'll see you on the next one. Bye. And remember to subscribe, please.